Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Saturday Morning Mastermind. We are back this week. Last week, we did not have our normal live stream. Several of us had other things that came up unexpectedly. So, as we say, we normally meet every Saturday, but once in a while we don't. I'm here with my friends Samantha, Catherine, Jason, and Karen. So before we get started and I introduce the book, I'll let them jump out and say hi really quick.
I thought you were going to go, Jason, because you're already unmuted, but I'll go. Morning, everybody. Samantha Studebaker Carl Hill here, coming from beautiful Indianapolis, Indiana.
I'm Karen Lohoff in Mesa, Arizona.
Hey, Jason Roberts here from Tampa, Florida. Glad to be here. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. It's Catherine Clement, and I'll be doing the reading this morning. We're in, I'll let Dan throw the book up for you. We're in Whatever Arises, Love That, A Love Revolution That Begins With You by Matt Kahn. And in the hardback cover, we're starting on page 120, which is A Monk on a Mountaintop Meditating. All right. Good morning, Angel. You want to introduce yourself before I get started reading?
Sure. I'm Angel Studebaker down here in South Carolina. Nice to be good to be here, everybody.
Awesome. So glad to have everybody, and just a huge shout out to all the mothers or anybody that serves as a mother, acts like a mother, is a mother. Happy Mother's Day, everybody. So, A Monk on a Mountaintop Meditating. In honor of the agreements and vows you have successfully cleared, I'd like to share a memory that came to me one day from a past life as a monk. I was shown a vision, as palpable as any object I can touch in this reality, of myself as a monk meditating on a mountaintop. During this meditation, I had a sensation inside my body that told me I am seconds away from experiencing nirvana. For a monk, nirvana is regarded as the absolute realization and embodiment of truth, the highest of all spiritual attainments. As I sensed the impending arrival of nirvana, I was shaking while trying to hold my focus. Give me just 1 second. Okay, I was shown, hold on, find my spot again. As I sensed the impending arrival of nirvana, I was shaking while trying to hold my focus as I waited for my graduation ceremony to dawn. Just as nirvana opened up, my physical body as a monk dissolved. I immediately entered the light and returned to source. This is what many descriptions of heaven or afterlife are referencing. I remember being so confused as I left my body. I began speaking to an angel who was there guiding me back. I asked, I was just about to reach nirvana. Why couldn't I have stayed moments longer? I was so frustrated. The angel looked at me and said, you would have always felt as if you were seconds away from nirvana. You would have been stuck in that moment of anticipation until the end of time. When I asked the angel to explain more, he said, you will always feel as if you are fingertips away from nirvana or moments away from your graduation, because you were under the impression that you were something other than the universe attempting to be completed. Can you see that you've been in nirvana all along, experiencing life as a person meditating or a monk in pursuit of it? As those words were spoken, the truth was revealed on a cosmic level. I watched myself from an omnipotent view on holographic screens. I was shown flashbacks of my entire life that led to becoming a monk. I saw images of being raised in an abusive household where my personality became inflamed in an attempt to match the egos around me. I became aware of the unconscious agreement I was making, which was, maybe if I become more like them, I'll be spared more often. As I lived in that abusive household, making agreements from the negotiating standpoint of ego, I was hoping for mercy to be spared from the abuse I had experienced. When I was of an age to care for myself in my late teens, I sought refuge in a monastery. As a way of trying to erase the memories and identity of being victimized by an abusive family, I took on the formal vows of a monk. In accepting such vows, I felt relief from the victimized inflammation of ego. From that viewpoint, I could see how I didn't actually escape ego, but reshaped it into a new spiritual character. By no fault of my own, I went from victimized inflammation into a higher state of righteous inflammation. I could also see how that wasn't a mistake of any kind. It was the necessary step in my journey that couldn't have unfolded in any other way. I watched as each of those events led me exactly where I needed to be, sitting atop a mountain, seconds away from Nirvana. As I watched that lifetime, I realized the vows and agreements that I made, while wonderfully pertinent, vital, and essential at the time, were no longer valid beyond that point. In many cases, the catalyst that inspired clarity and relief at one level of consciousness became the very things that I outgrew as a way of going even further. When I look back on that particular lifetime, on all of the agreements that I made with an abusive family, I saw that my way of being loved was to be abused less often. During times of abuse, the agreements I made were very valid for my survival. Even taking on the vows as a monk was essential to free me of the identity of victimhood, even if only to exchange it for a more spiritually sophisticated identity. As this vision ended, it was clear that I would no longer make agreements out of obligation or vows from a space of fear. I would make inspired, heartfelt choices rooted in the freedom of love. The most surprising part of all was, as I gave myself permission to choose, I recognized the reclaiming of my power as the most primal fear that I was meant to confront. Like so many energetically sensitive beings, in the end, you're not actually afraid of things lurking in the darkness, but intimidated by the light and power of your own divine authority. You may think you are afraid of insurmountable odds or the inevitability of loss, but perhaps the real fear is confronting and accepting how brightly you shine. When you stand tall in the supreme radiance of your innocent nature, letting freedom choose what only love can embrace, there are no obligations or motivations of guilt. There is only the will to be what you're meant to become as a gift for all who appear before you. You want to stop there?
Yeah, because that's the end of this chapter. So yeah, let's go ahead and stop there. And any thoughts or anything for me? Because for me, I'm going to say I think we're all trying to find that overarching sense of peace, I guess, is the best way I can say it, or even maybe relief from friction, I guess. Maybe that's a better way, because I know that there are days where I constantly say, and I say this all the time, Lord, give me strength, because it's like every day I feel like there's just something that always kind of just pushes me sometimes to the edge of like, and I'm just like, do I have to really deal with this, or why is this way? Why can't I just have some peacefulness, or even in my mind, normalcy, or what I think normal should be? And I think, for me, in that sense, that might be what I think Nirvana is, or just that sense of no real friction. But sometimes I think that without friction, I don't feel like I'm living either. So that's just a couple of thoughts that came through my head when we started reading this.
I really like the part in towards the end where he's talking about reclaiming his power and the idea of not realizing how wonderful, what a wonderful space we're in, not seeing it for all of its beauty and power and energies because we're so distracted by everything and by our energies and and not realizing what the energies actually are and how we should interpret them correctly, and that sometimes maybe we are mostly fearful of these energies that well up inside that are actually our anticipation of our becoming something greater than we really are, but we might misinterpret them, so I just appreciated that part of the end of the chapter there.
Well, I kind of agree with you. And as he says here, I sensed the impending arrival of Nirvana. I was shaking while trying to hold my focus as I waited for my graduation ceremony to my dawn. Just as Nirvana opened up, my physical body as a monk dissolved. And then he says, I immediately entered the light and returned to source. This is what many descriptions of heaven or afterlife are referencing. Then I remember being so confused as I left my body. I began speaking to an angel who was there guiding me back. I asked, I was just about to reach Nirvana. Why couldn't I have stayed moments longer? And I think that's kind of like what you alluded to. And of course, the angel said, well, you would have stayed in that moment for forever. I mean, till the end of time, which there will be no end of time, so to speak. You'll just continue. And I sometimes, and like he says, we don't realize that we are already maybe there, and to accept that and experience it and rise above where we're at now so we can enjoy what is going on now and experience it, rather than, like in my case, always wanting to look for that sense of peace, so that no friction time, or where I can just kind of go, okay, I have nothing really out there that's interacting or flaring up my ego, or where my ego flares up to get inflamed, and then I get, I think that's and I think we miss it time and time and time again, that we can get there and we just don't realize it.
Yeah, it's like it's almost as if, and for some people, I guess, and for myself sometimes as well, it's like when there's all kinds of friction, we're like frustrated, but we're working through it, and we're wishing there wasn't any friction. But then when there's no friction, it's like we almost don't know what to do, except just kind of, you try to appreciate it, but you almost don't know what to do with yourself because there's nothing to push back against, sort of. I don't know if that's what you were getting at there, but
Yeah, kind of. And then I think when we do have those moments where we have that bliss, so to speak, we tend to cause something to give us friction. So we have something to put our energy into, because that state or that presence or that being is so unfamiliar to us that to stay in it too long, I think we question it of its validity, I guess, maybe, or that is this really what this is really is. And I think we might not, we don't realize it, so therefore we try to bring back that friction so that way we go back to feeling like we feel normal and that life is, but yet we don't want that either. It's just that weird kind of continual, for lack of a better way, being on that hamster wheel and going round and round. Anybody else, if you have any thoughts, go ahead and jump in.
Yeah, I don't know what it is with us as humans where we just have this kind of, I don't know, we're just never satisfied. I mean, we're constantly wanting more in some way, shape, or form, whether it's more emotional, more relationship, more stuff, more to do, And then when we're doing so much, then we're like, I have too much to do. I gotta slow down. I gotta this, I gotta that. And then we don't have anything to do. And then we're sitting there going, I need to be doing something. It's like, it's such a weird thing. I mean, I don't know. I've studied a lot of different things that talk about, what is success? What's success for you and for yourself? What does that? How do you define it? And I feel like it doesn't matter what you define it as, because once you get there, then you're like, now what? Whatever that happens to be. And we just always want to be constantly improving or doing more or accumulating more. And I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I mean, I guess it just is. That's human nature. And we always seem like we're fighting against whatever it is right now, is that we're just not happy with it. We're that, like it says, that one kind of second from Nirvana, if you will. And yet it also says, we're already there. We're already there. And I feel like we can definitely experience that feeling at any point if we choose to. But it's kind of a weird thing, because if you're sitting there and you're like, okay, I'm completely at peace. We have all these little things that are niggling away at us going, well, you should be doing this, or you ought to be doing that, or, if you want this, you better do that. Or, it's like when I was in Georgia and we didn't really have a whole lot going on. I was basically just reading a lot and blogging and doing videos and experiencing nature. And when I would be outside just experiencing nature and feeling all completely peaceful and happy and la la la, and all of that, I would still have this niggling in the back of my mind going, you need to be doing something. You're not doing anything. We have this kind of idea in our culture that is, if you're not doing something or working towards something, then you're lazy, and that's a bad thing. And yet at the same time, we all have this kind of idea in our head that we want this peace in our life and we want everything to be perfect and wonderful, but how do we even define that? That's kind of the question. What is the definition of peace and happiness, or I don't know. And then I think there's a lot of people that are continually just doing something because they don't know the answer and they don't want to think about it, and so they just keep themselves busy. There's that aspect too.
I think it may be because we as humans have the whole thing of we have to get to the destination stuck in our heads or something like that. Like it's all it's all about like success is, I feel like everybody sees it as that's the destination. That's what we need to get to, instead of, and when they say, you know, when we're already in Nirvana, and, you know, I feel like it's one of those where it's talking about, you know, enjoy the journey kind of things. Like, since if we're in Nirvana, then Nirvana is the journey, and Nirvana isn't necessarily the destination. I mean, we've already kind of been through a handful of books that talks about, you know, it's not about the destination, guys. It's all about the journey. You know, it's just, if once you get, because if you have this point of success in your mind and you finally get there and you're like, well, it's not as Nirvana as I was wanting it to, and I was feeling more excited and more in Nirvana when I was working up to it. Now that I'm here, it's kind of like peaked, and we're like, oh, this is, now I need to do more, because I feel like it's not what I had imagined in my brain, or something, you know, something like that. I feel like we're all just stuck on getting to the destination instead of enjoying the journey there, is what I think that whole bit may be talking about, maybe. That's all.
No, I think that makes a little bit of sense, because like for me, there have been times where I've come home and I've just literally sat in my house, but no silence, just sitting there kind of thinking and whatever. And you're right. I'm in that moment, and when I first sit and do that and relax and like, oh, it's quiet, nobody around me, nobody talking, nobody doing this, not worrying about, you know, traffic or this or that, you know, like from being out when I'm Ubering and stuff, or, you know, anybody calling me or wanting, and I sit there and then I sit there and then I tend to, in my mind, it's like, okay, you've been sitting here a little too long. And then like going back to what you're saying, Samantha, I start creeping up in those ideas. Well, you know, I could, you know, do laundry, or I could clean this, or I could, you know, take care of that. Or, you know, instead of realizing that, you know, enjoy that time that I did have and enjoy it for what it is, but don't let that be the ultimate end. And that's just one aspect of the whole Nirvana idea, I think. You know, I think, like you were saying, Angel, Nirvana is the whole process, the step, everything. And if we can learn to see that and look at it for what it is, and highlight that and celebrate that, then maybe when we get to those moments where we do have that little downtime or whatever, we won't beat ourselves up so much either, because we'll be like, oh, this is just part of this journey, and it's the rest stop on the journey. Like when you're driving cross country, it's just that you're enjoying the scenery and stuff, but you also need to stop and just, you know, maybe get out, walk around, you know, put your feet to the ground rather than pushing on the gas pedal or this, you know. That's kind of like what we do. We push that gas pedal so much, and we're stuck in, you know, and we kind of get stuck with that rather than understanding that. And, you know, we stop and like, oh, let me get out, let me walk around. And we think of that a little bit more as like, oh, this is really nice. And we're getting going, but we like, oh, I got to get back on the road to reach my journey, rather than this is just a part of that whole journey. Let me enjoy it for what it is, and learn from it, and take it and accept it and include it with everything else I've experienced. So that way it adds to my growth for whatever the next phase is, as we move out of, for me, as I move from here, and I believe I'll go back to be with God, and, you know, be in that, and, you know, going on towards eternity for whatever that entails. So in that sense, I think you kind of, you know, help get that idea, you know, Angel, and it makes a little sense.
Yeah,
I like how he sorry, Jason.
please go ahead.
Thank you. I like how he reminds everybody, or the angel reminds everybody, that you're never going to get there until you're not here, pretty much. Like so many people spend their entire lives reaching for this state of being, this final moment of enlightenment where everything around them dissolves and the true universe is revealed, and they're waiting for it in like a motion picture sort of way. We've all been raised on movies and all of these special effects, and we have this we have this moment in our head where we think the heavens are going to part ways, and everything's going to be revealed in one moment, and that's a storybook version. We have to, going back to what Jason says, we have to perhaps change our interpretation of things. One of the most blissful moments of my day, and I'm sure many of yours, is when I lay down in bed and at night, and I'm there in my bed, and it's comfortable, and I'm warm, and it's quiet, and it's peaceful, and my body is relaxed, and like I'm just so grateful in that moment. And instead of laying there and hashing out everything in my day that I didn't do right and berating myself like my mind might be wanting to do, I really, really just embrace those moments, those beautiful, perfect moments, and I'm so grateful for them. And I think when we get really wired over something, or we're really distraught and upset over something, I think if we can just learn to interpret that differently, instead of the world is against me, life isn't fair, even you could take it to a quote higher spiritual level. Why the hell did I choose this life? I mean, you could go any kind of way you want to go with that. But when we feel that angst, if we can just remember, okay, I'm this little tiny part of me. There's this huge part of me out there that understands things way better than I do. And what I'm feeling now is just the difference between those two things, as opposed to how horrible the world is. Because when we stay focused on the problem, we just get more problems, right? If we're just always focused on the problem, we really have to move to a more solution. We have to be solution focused instead of problem focused, which goes back to my turn left cricket, which is going to have to be a book now, because I watched that bug walk up to that rock, and he did not stand there looking at that rock. He just walked around it because he was solution focused. He wasn't problem focused. So, but that goes back to what you said, Jason, about interpreting things. We feel this, we feel our heart rate quicken, we feel our breath quicken, we feel anxious, or what we interpret as anxious. But that same thing, those same physical sensations, can be interpreted as other things as well. Sometimes we get like in this groove where we're told by somebody who's been given a piece of paper with their name doctor on it that we have a condition like anxiety or something, and we just every emotion that comes up, every physical sensation that comes up, we tend to put it in that, oh, that's my anxiety. Well, it could be excitement. You know, it's the same physical sensation. So, and I'm not saying that to put down anybody that feels like they have anxiety, because anxieties are a huge real thing. Like I experience it myself. So I know, I think everybody does what that feels like, but I also think we have to really stop in that moment and decipher that a little bit and find out, can we interpret that in a way that makes us feel better as opposed to feeling worse?
Yeah, for me, I think it's easy to see that, how our feelings can get can that we can attach certain feelings to different situations, and maybe the incorrect situations sometimes when we're growing up, because of our maybe our just the environment that we were in. If you were growing up and you were never really able to get excited about the possibilities of obtaining or getting something from your parents by asking them, and then you might end up, that same excitement you might associate that with the anxiety of never getting, or always getting disappointed. The possibility of getting disappointed instead of the possibility of getting what you want. But it's the same emotion, but I like what, Catherine, you turned me on to some of those videos recently with the Abraham and Esther Hicks, and I really have found it very interesting in how they're suggesting we look at the conditions, or or maybe what like Dan was referring to as the frictions, as an opportunity to recognize where an opportunity for like appreciation, and to recognize when we're maybe not necessarily in alignment. Because what I've been getting out of the teachings is that they talk about being in alignment with your source, and basically feeling the looking for where you are most satisfied, and to try to condense and bring it into relevance to what we're speaking about. It's as if we can sometimes take ourselves on a journey to achieve goals that we believe are going to satisfy us, and they may bring us some satisfaction that we are the type of satisfaction that we're used to, but those goals may and a lot of the times aren't in alignment with our source and what truly brings us satisfaction. And so that even though it brings us satisfaction in achieving those goals, we're left wanting more, because it's not bringing us the satisfaction that our inner being that we truly want, and that and what it speaks of, and what I brought out from it, is that if we spend more time to look at to figure out what our true satisfaction is in alignment with our inner being, then we can utilize those frictions and conditions to compare it and then know when we're out of an alignment so that we can get back into alignment. So we don't spend too much time focusing on goals that won't really bring us to satisfaction. Sure, there's some things that we need to do just to maintain our own lives, but to know when one thing is one and the other is the other, then we can interpret things better and know what we're going to end up with in the end. It's still, I think like we were talking about the journey being important. I think that journey is important no matter what we're trying to achieve. However, with what they're saying, it was just really interesting that that those energies that we experience and those feelings that we experience can be a guide for us. So I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Yeah, I kind of like a little bit what you both have shared, especially when Catherine was talking about, she was talking about ourselves here and what we're going through, and I'm trying to remember and kind of paraphrase what's happening, what we're experiencing here and dealing with here, and then but trying to remember that we have our higher self that is higher and knows and understands overarching all of that, and what the friction might be, or what the anxiety, or however you best want to describe it, is that difference. And I've never really thought of it that way. And like for me, maybe part of that difference in how I look at me with my faith of, between me and how I look at God and stuff. And part of that is that difference between. And so therefore, in looking at this journey and going back to what Angel was saying, understand that this journey is part of what, for lack of a better way of saying, we've agreed to, or part of the God source, infinite intelligence, all agreement of what we experience now. And that difference is, that, and to not focus on, like you say, the destination, so to speak, like you're saying, Angel, but what we're walking through, what we're going through, and to know that I think on this side, we're not going to have all the answers that, our higher self, spiritual self, or, however you want to call it. For me, I call it my relationship with God, interacts to help me continue to work towards that peace, knowing I'm always going to be on that journey till whenever I, for lack of a better word, transition, I guess, so to speak, move into that back into that higher self, or how I look at, go back to be with God, and in that more intimate, out of this realm experience, to where I can then take this and put it back into context there, and then grow and go from there. And just know that I don't have to always have all the answers, and two, I don't always have to be striving to get somewhere, but to accept that I'm going through, and this is all meant to help me, I think, grow and better understand myself here, I guess, in that sense.
Yeah, well, like what Samantha said, where how we seem to attract what we're thinking about. I think that was part of what she was saying. If you're looking for lessons in the world, the world will teach you some lessons, kind of thing. It seems like, or that's what we'll see. If we're expecting obstacles, then we're looking for, and we might when we come up to an obstacle, like what Catherine was saying, we might be like, well, how do I move this obstacle? How do I get this obstacle out of my way instead of looking at it differently and just going around it and not seeing it as an obstacle. I think what I also was pulling from this latest information was that the way to figure out what would satisfies our inner self, our higher power, so to speak, or whatever it is, that is to focus and think about what inspires us, what really gives us that energizing feeling of being inspired about something, and that is what's in alignment with our source. That's a good way, at least, of experiencing that feeling. So then we know the contrast of between the energy that we get when we're given a goal or a task to do, and we're like, we get into that mode, and we're okay, I'm going to feel satisfaction from that, and to be able to determine that energy from what inspires us. So basically, to take the time 10 or 15 minutes a day to focus on the things that inspire us, that raise our energy levels, that piques our interest, the reasons for it, the things that associate or attach to our higher power, to our inner being, to our source, things that really kind of get you motivated from being inspired from the things that you want to do, rather than getting something from doing what's from something that someone else wants you to do, or our environment wants us to do. The distractions and the commercials that tell you, hey, you want to buy this, you want to do this, but instead separate yourselves from that, calm our minds, and then focus on the things that truly inspire us, that project that we really like to work on because we see so much potential in it. Things like that, anyway. Basically that by doing that, you're opening up the channels to receive more of that, too. Like from what we were saying before, if you're looking for lessons, you'll find you'll get those lessons, and they may come in odd ways, may come in different types of friction or whatnot. But if you're open and focused on the inspiration, and then this kind of goes back to the end of the book, where and I've experienced this, where you get inspired, you feel like, hey, things are moving along, you're in the flow, and then I start to feel that fear of becoming that which I before couldn't even imagine how great you can be, and to actually experience your power, and you start to actually withdraw and wait, well, maybe I need to slow down, I don't know if anyone's experienced that as well, but it's kind of part of it, I think.
Yeah, no, I've experienced that, but I also want to hit on a point that you said about what Samantha said about, a lot of times we attract what we focus on and put our energy on, but this is still my big area and big quandary, and my big issue is because I personally, and maybe it's very deep and very subconsciously, there are things that happen that I don't want to have happen. And there are things that go on that I don't think I'm focusing on, but yet they still happen. And they really have an adverse effect. And so then it pushed me into a whole nother mindset. And I feel like I'm reacting to it because I never wanted this thing. I never wanted this scenario to happen, but it still happened. Case in point with, an accident I had a couple of weeks, 3 weeks ago with my car. I was in no way, shape, form, focusing on anything like that happening, but it happened, and now it has turned me and my life and my finances and everything kind of upside down, for where things were going really good and I was kind of moving forward. That's where I have problems, because I know I was not focused in any way, shape, or form on anything like that happening, and yet it still happened. That's where I have problems with some of these things, and why, and how come, and why does it happen? And it seems like it's kind of like this, like it's kind of like happens before my past, kind of, certain things, and then something happens. Then, so I've seen other instances, maybe not this exact same instances, but where there have been things where have happened that I, once again, was in no way, shape, or form was focused on or anything, and yet it still happened. And that's what I don't understand. And that's where I tend to have problems with this and have issues around those type of things, where people say, well, you get what you focus on. I was in no way effing form focusing on anything like this happening. So why did it happen?
I think that's, oh, sorry, I thought you were done.
No, I was just going to say, that's my biggest issue in all of this. And I think I fight it all the time. It seems like.
I think we all fight it, because we can't see the bigger picture. All we can see is what's happening right now. And like this whole search for our house, it's been going for, I've been focused on finding a house, right? And it took us over 2 years to do it. And it's like, gosh, why is it taking so long, And because I'm thinking about it all the time. You'd think it would just be pop right into existence, but it didn't work that way. And then, years ago when we were struggling more financially, I'm like, this is so frustrating, and I really want, more in my life. I want financial security. I want blah 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 blah, and the universe has a weird way of providing for us. It's like for instance, I was so perfectly happy in our camper and living in the woods and being all la 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 and all that, perfectly not really busy with a whole lot. And I didn't have a lot of responsibilities, and I was really enjoying that. I really liked that. But yet at the same time, financially, we weren't doing so great. And so I was reading lots of books on financial and attracting finances and da 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 da. So I started doing these little things, and one of the things that it told me to do was to take some, like, $20, start with $20 or 5 or 1, whatever you happen to have, and I happen to have $20, and I just stuck it in the back of my wallet, and it says to keep that money there as if it is you don't need it. It's just money you don't need. You have so much money that you have this money in your wallet and you will never use it. It's there. It's just always there. And so it's like this weird mindset thing, So I started doing little things like that. Well, what happened? My husband decided he wanted to go back into trucking, and I was so against it. So freaking against it. I'm like fighting it every step of the way. I'm like, I don't want this. I've not wanted to go back into trucking and that whole aspect. And yet that led us to being able to grow the business, which led us back to Indiana, which I didn't want to do that either, and through a series of things that have happened, all because of that thing that I said I didn't want. That's how we've gotten to financial security, So it's such a weird thing, we can not focus on something and end up getting it, and we can focus on something and not get it. It just is. It's I was watching this terrible, terrible, terrible TV show, and I'll admit it, sometimes I watch really crappy TV shows, and this one is just awful. but it was a weird message in the end. So this girl gets kidnapped. Well, okay, let me start at the beginning. So she wishes that her mom and dad were together, and she wishes that she really could meet her dad because she's never had anything to do with her dad. And so she wants to have something to do with her dad. And so something happens and it makes it so that she can make a wish. And she thinks this is like the wish, you know. So she makes this wish that she can be with her dad. Well, what happens? She doesn't instantly become with her dad. She gets kidnapped by this creepy clown or this creepy Santa person. And through a series of all these things happening and blah, 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 she's in the midst of being kidnapped. And then her dad learns she even exists because he didn't even know she exists. And then he goes through all of this crap. And in the end, they're reunited. And he's the one that ends up saving her from the kidnapper. And that's the way the universe tends to seem to work. It's like you say you want this one thing to happen, and it never happens how you want it to. It happens through some other crazy means of existing, and sometimes you got to go through some terrible shit in order to get there, which really sucks. But I don't even know what to think about, with that, because I can look back on my life and see all kinds of shit that just was like falling apart left and right, and things weren't going the way that I was expecting it. And yet, it brings me to the here and now, and I can look back and see, okay, well, this happened and that happened and this and that, and it all led me to go to here. And here we are. And there was some really sucky shit that happened, but now everything is pretty good. And be careful what you wish for, because you start wishing for something and it may send you through a shitstorm to get there. I don't know.
But that's the point, because I'm not wishing the things that are happening in all the instances, the things that happened that were bad, like getting laid off, getting let go of a job, this, that, all those things. I in no way was ever wanting, focusing, desiring, not even remotely on my radar for me personally, not even within the scope of my thought. And this stuff happens. So I'm sitting there going, yeah, okay. People say, well, focus on, what you want, focus on, manifest that. Well, half the time when I try to do that, yeah, sometimes it starts to kind of materialize, but then something comes out of the, way over here, out here, that I don't know about, I'm not focusing on, I'm not thinking about, not anywhere clear, and it comes up and it sideswipes everything. And so that's part of my rub with a lot of the things that happen and go through and people deal with. And it for lack of a better word, it irritates the living shit out of me, because I'm like, why? How come? Where did this come from? Why in the hell am I having to go through this when I don't? And I'm gonna be. I don't feel I should have to go through this effing shit. I mean, that's part of what
your higher self might disagree. You're not here alone, honey. Your higher self has a plan for things that you are going to learn here. And I can tell, like, just from listening to you, that it may be subconscious, but it's obvious to me. So it's not so subconscious that you have like this underlying theme. And I think we all do to some respect. I'm not really saying you're like, it's you, but I'm just saying, like, we all have this underlying, oh, everything's going good, and life is good right now. And then we have this like, so what is about to come bitch slap me, like we're waiting for the other shoe to drop all the time. I was thinking about this in respect to Lori, because Lori has been hit on her scooter several times. And I was thinking, if I were Lori, how would I go out on my scooter without that nagging thing in the back of my head? Even if I'm not trying to focus on it, how could I possibly go out without somewhere in there a thought going, oh gosh, I hope I don't get hit again, or, wow, I have this new car. I hope everything, I hope it lasts for the rest of my life. I hope everything, I never have to buy another car. This one's going to last me forever. And I see you laughing. So I know this stuff, our minds, but we have to remember we're not here alone. Our higher self knows a lot more about what's going on and will guide us to the experiences that we need in order to fulfill whatever we have come here to do. And we don't know what those things are. Sometimes we get hints. A lot of times we don't pay attention to those hints because we think that we're not capable of that, or, that's too easy. I can't really do that for a living because that would be fun, and fun isn't, we're not here for fun. We're here to work and to have children and to get married and to do all these other things. I do love Abraham Hicks. I love her animated series. I love the way that she puts, or they, because Abraham is a they, I love the way that they put things in a way that you can laugh about them, because I think it does come down to not what we're going through. And we've heard this all so many millions of times, but it really doesn't matter what we're going through. It matters how we look at what we're going through and how we interpret what we're going through. And this accident where I fell down the stairs and broke my foot, at first I was like super upset. Well, why would I do such a thing? I was just getting back on my feet. I was just getting my health back. Why did this have to happen? Well, then not only did that happen, that like went into this horrible nerve CRPS condition, which is, I'm told, I'll never get rid of. It'll just get worse for the rest of my life. And then I'm thinking, well, what the hell? What is all this about? Well, come to find out, now that I have to walk every day or I'm going to lose my foot, I'm starting to get my bone density back, I think, from being wheelchair bound for so many years and being inactive after that, because once your muscles are atrophied, it's really hard to get back in there and build everything back up. But the universe kind of placed me into a position where I have no choice. I have no freaking choice. Now I can be really pissed off about that, or I can kind of sit back and go, wow, that's freaking amazing, man. How that worked out. Like, wow, it really is when you think about it. I love you guys. I hope you have a magical week, and happy Mother's Day to everybody.
Yeah, happy Mother's Day to you as well, Catherine and Karen and Angel. And, that makes me really kind of think about that statement in there about being afraid of what did it say? Hold on. Being afraid of your higher something or other. What was it? I don't have my book right here. But it basically, it's like you're not afraid of the things that are going on or whatever. You're afraid of your own personal power. And I'm kind of wondering, are we really afraid of what our higher self has in store for us? Because our higher self can see the big picture, and it can point us in the direction that we need to go. And it also, takes us down some paths where we got to go through some shit in order to have the experience that we say that we want, if you will. And, so that is kind of, but that's the thing that maybe we're really afraid of is that, we're just this human having this human experience. And as a human, we have so many fears, and there are so many things that can happen. And yet, as a higher self, we're infinite. And so there's nothing that can hurt us. But we struggle with that as humans, is that we think that we can be hurt. We think we can be destroyed. We think that if some shit happens, it's horrible, when in from the spiritual perspective, it's not at all. It's an experience. We're feeling something from it. We're learning something from it. from that perspective. And that's hard. It's so freaking hard as a human to just allow whatever it is to happen in our lives, because we want to control every aspect of it. We want it to just bend to our will and be what we want in any given moment. And but I don't think that we as the human self is the one that necessarily gets to have what we want, and that's hard too, and we can kind of look at that in some respects of from the Christian standpoint, it's what, God's will, right? And if you're not a Christian or you don't believe in God, then that could be our higher self's will. And yet at the same time, we've also been taught, if we're Christians, or if we are say we're listening to Abraham Hicks, is that we have your best interest at our core being. And so we know what you need, we know what you want, we know what is best for you, and all you have to do is allow for it to happen. But that is hard as a human. It is so freaking hard, and we get so upset about things because we don't think it's going the way that it needs to go. And it's like, for me right now, my biggest thing that is niggling in the back of my mind is, when's the shit gonna hit the fan? When's all of this gonna fall apart? When's somebody gonna get in an accident and then they're suing us? When's this? When's that? Blah blah blah. When am I gonna have something happen and some medical condition comes along and wipes us out financially? I mean, there's so many different things, and I'm like, I've got to stop thinking about that stuff and start just trying to live and be and enjoy what's going on, and just, I don't want to say that hope for the best is probably not exactly the right way of looking at it, but in a way that's like that's the phrase that comes to mind, is hope for the best. But really it's just more of a allow for the experience, I guess, and love it as it arises. Like Matt says, just love whatever arises. And that is that can be difficult, but I can look back on my entire life and I can see all the things that have happened so far, and I have survived it, and I have enjoyed a lot of it, and a lot of it was a struggle, but I learned something from it, and I became what I am now in my life. And is this the best version of myself so far? I don't know. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. Maybe I'm just on the roller coaster ride, and sometimes I am a better version of myself than other times, and that's okay too. So we'll just kind of see how it goes, and then try and enjoy the journey, because that's all we have is the journey. We don't really have the destination, and we don't really have what we were before. All we have is our memories of what was. Maybe it was. Maybe it's just all in our mind. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, with that, unless anybody else has something, it's about 1:15. So with that, I'm going to kind of wrap up. We are in the book, Whatever Arises, Love That, A Love Revolution That Begins With You by Matt Kahn. We're going to be starting chapter 7, Mastering Relationships, and starting that next week. So once again, you can find us on Facebook at Mindset Mastery Collective. Join our group. If you want to be on the live stream, you can get a hold of any one of us and we can help you out with that. You can also find us on YouTube and see the live stream on Facebook when we live stream it when we're talking. But you can find our YouTube videos on YouTube under Mindset Mastery Collective there. And we have all our videos that we've done over the years that we've been doing this. So please go to both Facebook and YouTube, like it, thumbs up it, subscribe, come join us. We'd love to have you be a part of us. And we look forward to seeing you all next week on the Saturday Morning